Welcome to Prop Talk, your one-stop destination for all things multifamily. Whether you're an investor, a seasoned operator, a first-time manager, or just curious about the industry, we're here to break down complex property trends and dissect the latest market news while providing valuable insights for you. At Prop Talk, we delve into the nuts and bolts of property management. We also explore innovative strategies for navigating different market conditions and discuss how technology is shaping the future of multifamily. But that's not all. We also aim to reveal the human side of the industry with candid stories, fun facts, and the untold tales that define the world of property. Today's episode is another Trailblazers in multifamily featuring Bill Nye, the apartment guy. Bill Nye has a very distinguished and successful career as a leader in both the military and the private sector. While serving in the United States Air Force, he was named one of the 12 Outstanding Airmen of the Year for the entire Air Force, and was also honored along with his fellow recipients at a dinner at the White House with President Ronald Reagan. He is a graduate of the prestigious Air Force Leadership School and credits much of his leadership philosophies to what he learned while attending. As a multifamily executive, he was named Executive of the Year twice by Apartments Magazine, a multifamily publication covering the Mid-Atlantic region of the U.S. During his time as the CEO of Cavaness & Cates Property Management in North Carolina, his team earned the highest satisfaction ratings in the country 3 consecutive years, and during his time as the COO of Berger Communities in Pennsylvania, they earned the same distinction 2 years in a row. While serving as the COO of Berger Communities, they were named a top 25 best places to work employer for 3 straight years, and a top 10 employer for 2 straight years. Today, Bill runs his own speaking, training, and consulting business in Friendswood, Texas. And now, enjoy listening to Trailblazers in Multifamily Part 2 with Bill Nye, the apartment guy.
How do you get it back? Like, how do you, in a high pressure situation, maybe it's growth in the company, it's different investment groups, that maybe you're not even on the right page. Like, where can a leader start to maybe take that step back and understand and figure out, what their culture is? Because like you said, you have one.
Yeah, that's right.
It could be filled with weeds or roses.
Right.
It kind of depends on, what investment and how it's been prioritized.
Yeah.
So as a leader that might find myself in that position or himself in that position, like, first off, let's start this. What would be signs that if I don't see it, maybe we've gotten off track?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were coming in consulting, is there things that you would look for or some like go-to things that are like, okay, these are the easy tables, table stakes?
Right. Yeah. The easy things to spot. Yeah. I'm working with a group right now and I love working with this group because they want it so badly. And I told them, I said, that I'm working with their leadership group. And I said, your commitment to this is not going to be the problem. Your challenge is going to be changing your behaviors. And that's hard for all of us to change our behaviors. So, one of the things that, going back to my time in the Air Force, it's about making sure that you never lose sight of the mission. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? See, when crisis happens or when the market shifts, we're going through some crazy market shifts right now, right? Mm-hmm. We hear properties going into foreclosure, occupancy rates are dropping, cap rates are going up. Obviously, multifamily lending right now is going through a big struggle because of interest rates. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on that, are self-inflicted as a society, but there's a lot of things that are going on that have absolutely had a tremendous impact. So this is the panic moment. And so what happens is we bail the things that got us here that were our priorities, such as our values and our vision and our mission to put out the fire. Here's an example. This is a horrible, horrible story. It's a tragic story. Several years ago, Eastern Airlines, who, of course, obviously is no longer in business.
I was going to say, I don't remember that one.
And this story put them out of business. This one incident put an entire airline out of business. So Eastern Airlines is flying over Florida, and they got an indication that they had an issue with their landing gear. And so the pilot, the co-pilot, both just stopped flying the plane to try to figure out this issue, this indication that they had a landing gear issue. And they crashed the plane into the ground. As it turns out, they had no issue with the landing gear. they had an indication issue, meaning that they had a breaker popped or they got a barcode and I know that may not barcode. They got a barber stripe pole looking thing that's black and yellow on a plane that says something's wrong. And that's one of the things I learned about being a flight engineer. When you got an indication that something was wrong, the first question you did, your diagnostic was, is something wrong or do I have a bad circuit breaker? Do I have a bad indicator? Because the system may be working fine. I have an indication that's malfunctioned, so we're okay. So I got an indication where we've lost hydraulics, but we haven't lost hydraulics. I just need to switch out a circuit breaker or an indicator that will tell me that we're okay. And so these guys completely lost. So here's the thing. Think about it this way.
I'm trying to think how you completely stop flying a plane, but that's a whole other.
Well, technology has changed with, autopilot and stuff now compared to then. And so they, and when they recovered the black box, they crashed into the Everglades and everybody died. And the lawsuit was so big that it put Eastern Airlines out of business. And so, when they recovered the black box, they could hear the cockpit conversation. And the only thing they focused on was that indicator. And they weren't focusing on their altitude, their airspeed, whether or not they were, their horizon indicator. They completely took their eyes off of everything that kept everybody safe because they couldn't stop focusing on this one issue, and it caused them to literally fly the plane to the ground. So think about it this way. So you're a flight crew member of a cargo plane in the United States Air Force. And you're taking off from California and you're flying to a foreign country over, let's say, the Pacific Ocean. So you're going to fly over the Pacific Ocean to a foreign country where United States Marines have engaged in a battle. And these Marines are running out of food, water, and ammunition. And so there has been a mission that has been established that at a certain time at night, at a certain location, you're going to fly over these Marines, open your back hatch, push pallets out, and those pallets are going to have food, water, and ammunition. That's right. Keep them alive. And these Marines are going to come out from their foxholes and their cover and expose themselves into this field because you can't drop these pallets in the woods. You're going to drop it over a field. And so you've got a small window where this has to happen. And if you're late, you've left all these Marines who are running out of ammunition. Exposed. You've left them exposed in that field. And so while you're flying over the Pacific Ocean, you get an engine fire. Well, that's a problem, right? You've got to fight the fire. And one of the things they taught me when I was in the Air Force was not everybody fights the fire. One person fights the fire, everybody else flies the plane because you have to stay on schedule. And so what happens is when market conditions change, everybody starts fighting the fire. Everybody. And when you start everybody starts fighting the fire, the drop in the occupancy or you're no longer getting rental increases, resident retention is dropping, delinquency's going up, whatever it is, when everybody's focused on the fire, nobody's flying the plane. That's when you forget about your mission. That's when you forget about your values. That's when you forget about why are we doing this. That's when you forget about your why, because you're so consumed with the fire. And so it's imperative that leaders are disciplined enough to say, you fight the fire, you keep us on schedule, because a whole battalion of Marines will die if we don't make that drop. And so I think that's what has to happen. But that requires a skill. That's why I said not everybody can lead.
Can you think back to what you were saying earlier about what kind of culture you have, if it's been even inadvertently deprioritized? How would you recommend someone take stock of that at the moment? Like, what might be some other signs that they may see in their business? If I'm the CEO of a company, and I think in one of our conversations, you said something about be careful about believing your own press. If I remember correctly. Because if you're at the top end of the market and you worked really hard to get there and you had some great press, but sometimes you can get trapped in thinking everything is still working and flowing, like you said,
that's right,
the same way. When in reality, there is things bubbling up, and maybe it is in the form of reviews or press in some form or fashion. But I have seen this, and I've never been a consultant, but I wonder, how do you deal with the leadership that doesn't see?
you've got to expand your horizon and listen to everybody. And that may sound really unproductive, because if you listen to everybody, then how do you establish your priorities? But what I mean by that is, don't just listen to the one or two people who are really faithful and loyal to the organization. Those are valuable people, and you should listen to them. But they're going to tell you what you want to hear, and they're going to tell you what makes them look good, because it's innate to protect yourself, right? That's everybody does that. Doesn't make them a bad person. It's just who they are. But you've got somebody out here, who works in a much lower position, who is saying, this job has become awful. It's become unbearable. Why? What's changed? Do a little bit of digging. It's easy to say when a resident, writes a terrible review and gives you a 1. It's easy to say, they're just negative and critical.
Yeah, they got a late fee.
Right. They're unhappy. Right. Because you wouldn't give them what they wanted, or they got charged with a late fee. That's exactly right. But you start to see a pattern. You start to see a pattern. You better pay attention. You better stop and pay attention. The thing that gets me is that when I talk to people in these positions, is they struggle to really be able to articulate clearly what their top priorities are. And and a really healthy culture, as
everybody knows.
That's right. Everybody knows what that's exactly right. I knew across the street, we had 5 acres across the street, across the road. And I mean, when I say road, it was literally, we lived on a gravel road. And so on the other side of that road, we had 5 acres. That was where we grew our sweet corn. And I knew that's where we grew our sweet corn. That field, the priority for that piece of dirt was sweet corn. My dad just felt that was where, it was just prime for sweet corn, and he would take that into Cleveland and Akron and sell it to supermarkets, and we'd have roadside stands set up, and people would come by and buy the sweet. Oh, it was good.
There's a thing about sweet corn. I know what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knew that was a sweet corn field, right? There was no ambiguity about that. And so, with really healthy cultures, everybody's clear about what it is. Going back to the story with the plane and the engine fire and the Marines, everybody was crystal clear on every aspect of that mission.
Right.
Of the altitude, the airspeed, when we were going to meet up with a KC-135 for in-flight refueling, because we couldn't stop, we couldn't land at Hickam Air Base in Hawaii and refuel. That took too long, so we were going to do in-flight refueling. We knew the coordinates for that. We knew the altitude for that. We knew, everything to do that. Everybody knew every aspect of that mission. Everybody knew what the priorities were. They were crystal clear about the mission. There was no ambiguity. See, panic and anger makes everybody forget about what they're supposed to be doing, and everybody's reacting.
Yeah.
And it's toxic.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that.
But it's common.
It made me think about, as you were there talking, coming out of the pandemic 21, we start the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder how many people thought to themselves in leadership positions that the churn was due to the Great Resignation and just the nature coming out of the pandemic, rather than why allow that to be the excuse for the churn? Like how, I would imagine that it was, and unfortunately we allowed it that way, right? We allowed that to be a mindset that, it's not that our company has an issue, it's the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard conversations like that, but I know I did. And I remember thinking, but was it really? Because other people, they're not having the same level of churn.
Yeah, right.
So you've got to be willing to take that step back and evaluate.
Yeah, I don't call it the Great Resignation. I call it the Great Awakening, because I think that's what it is. I think the resignation was a byproduct of the awakening. And the awakening was people suddenly started working in smaller groups or working from home, and then suddenly realized, man, I hate going to the office. I hate working with Tim. I hate the people on my team. And now it's all over, and we're all like, okay, go back to the office that you've now discovered. So what is it about the office environment that you hate? How do we fix that? I led an organization in North Carolina almost 2 years, 0 turnover. In almost 2 years. Not a single employee was terminated or quit. That's unheard of in multifamily, as you know.
Yeah.
Everybody has turnover. But we went almost 2 years with 0 turnover. And I think if you get it right, and if the soil is rich, then beautiful things grow. And so, I think you're right. I think that people came back from this and we had emotions that, it messed with me, and I consider myself to be an extremely resilient person. I've been through a lot of things, a lot of the military training I went through in my my career. I went through a lot of things that tested my mettle. But I'm going to tell you that, that lockdown and that lack of human interaction and, losing sports, which, I'm very passionate about. I lost a lot of things. I couldn't go get my hair cut on a monthly basis.
Is that back when you had the long hair we were talking about earlier?
No, it got a lot longer than it is now. But no, that was a much earlier day, back when I looked like David Cassidy from the Partridge Family. But,
Okay, that dated you. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I know. And so I get that we want to talk about and focus on mental health, but I think we're going about it in all the wrong ways. I think you can take mental health and these things, and you can make it more about accepting things that you would have never accepted before. And I think it's okay to have standards, and I think it's okay to have expectations. In fact, I think it's necessary. And so it's good to focus on people's mental health, but don't make mental health the top of the pyramid, because in order to then say, I'm doing this because I care about people, listen, here's an example.
You can't make business decisions based on.
That's right. That's
individual. Well, and I agree with you. I think maybe that's where we've gone. There's a balance.
That's right. We tipped too far the other way.
We tipped too far because
no question about it.
And that's starting to show up in results and financial performance.
Yeah.
Why you see large corporations all over at least in the United States, I'm aware of, that are making big shifts. Why there's hard shifts back into the office, because at the end of the day, we have businesses to run.
Right.
And as long as we can still run the business, we're happy to move and shape however we can, but we can't do it to the point of where it becomes detrimental to the business.
Yeah, listen, in 2019, nobody said, you're what's the word I'm looking for? You're a dictator. You're a evil control freak by telling me I had to come to the office.
Yeah.
Right? In 2019, nobody said, I hate my boss because my boss expects me to come to the office 5 days a week.
Or be on time.
So, right. So if it was okay in 2019, what changed in 2023 when saying come to the office suddenly makes you, an awful person? I don't understand. I don't understand that.
I do think I understand a little bit of the work-life balance that I think maybe is where the struggle comes in for people. Because when you went full remote, which a lot of people did. Now, not everybody did in multifamily because we still had assets to run, but
that's right.
Look at technology, for example.
Right. The tech world, that was, you were not essential. You could work from home.
And I do think there was lessons learned, because I remember hearing from our employees about just having time to have breakfast with their kids or have lunch with their kids.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful thing.
And so finding some flexibility is,
that's
mental health.
That's the key, flexibility.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. That's the word we should be using, is flexibility. And I think great leaders understand what that means and how to use that. That's a tool in your toolbox as a leader, is understanding flexibility, how to use it in a way that improves the organization, improves morale, improves the outcome.
Yep.
Rather than being held hostage. Because when people start holding you hostage, saying, I'm going to quit, the flexibility has been thrown out the window.
Right.
Ultimatums are not flexible. Ultimatums are rigid. Yeah. Right. But I think here's the key. Going back to what I said earlier about, I see all these, seminars on, I saw one, somebody's presenting a seminar. It's called How to Build a Culture of Peace. There's no such thing. There is no such thing as a culture of peace. It doesn't exist. Peace could be a byproduct of your culture, but it is not a type of culture. There's only two types of cultures. And again, I know people are going to hear this like, oh, this guy. But I'm telling you, there's only two types of culture. It's a culture of freedom, or it's a culture of control. Now, the military is a culture of control.
Right.
First responders, culture of control. Emergency rooms, hospitals, culture of control. Why? Because they recognize that that's the only way it works.
Right.
A culture of freedom, customer service organizations. But now listen, Walmart's a
Netflix.
culture of control.
Yeah.
Right. Netflix is a culture of freedom.
Mhm.
Walmart's a culture of control. McDonald's is a culture of control. And, Walmart says, look, just follow the policies. Don't try to solve problems. Just follow the policies. Show up for work on time. Follow the policies. You'll be a lifelong associate. You don't do those two things, then we've got 150 resumes in our computer right now of people live within a mile of this store who would love to work here. And so they churn through people. But the culture of control works for them. And so you have to understand that when you start talking about flexibility, are you a culture of freedom or a culture of control? You think the Marine Corps gives their Marines flexibility on
No.
when to show up? No, because they're a culture of control.
No.
And so, when we talk about work-life balance, I think that's also a great misunderstanding. I hear people say, that work-life balance should be a goal. No, it shouldn't. Work-life balance should be a strategy. Shouldn't be a goal. Should be a strategy. And if you make it...
Boy, I'm so running with that one.
If you have a strategy for work-life balance, guess what you're more likely to actually have? Work-life balance. Because you have a strategy in place to make sure that there is work-life balance. But if it's a goal, then what are you doing to actually, what's your strategy to bring it to fruition? Stop looking at it as a goal and look at it as a strategy. I sat on a panel, I was with Berger, so this is when I was living in Pennsylvania. I sat on a panel probably 2019 with 3 other company executives and big audience of people working in the multifamily industry. And this work-life balance question came up. And I listened to the other 3, and I was the 4th one to answer this question just because that's how they laid it out. And I listened to the other 3 say things like this. Look, it's just part of the job. If you choose to work in multifamily, you're not going to have any work-life balance. That's really what the other 3 were saying. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, 2 things are about to happen. One, the people who work for them are thinking, I work for a jerk. And 2, the other 3 people on the panel, when it's my turn, they're going to hate my guts because I'm about to make them look bad. That wasn't my goal, but I'm not going to withhold the truth because it hurts your feelings. And so it got to me. I said what I just said to you. The problem is you're looking at work-life balance like it should be a goal. It's not a goal. Make it a strategy. What is your strategy to ensure that you have work-life balance? In a culture of freedom, it's a little easier to do. In a culture of control, it's a little bit harder. You gotta be a little more creative. But in either of those cultures, you can ensure that your team will have work-life balance. But when in a culture of control it becomes listen, I see this all the time. It's 8:30 at night and an email comes in from the regional manager. They're asking about a report that they've just seen. Now the property manager feels obligated to respond. Pause the TV show, walk away from dinner, walk away from story time with the kids and jump on the computer and spend 30 minutes looking at this report to be able to give an answer. Now, here's the question. What's changing at 9:30 tonight when you finally answer that regional manager's question? What's changing? Nothing. Then why'd you do it? See, that's the strategy. And so the strategy is as simple as, for instance, when I was with Berger, we had, I called them quiet hours. Now that's a term I stole from the Air Force. On an Air Force base, they have quiet hours. Those are hours of the night where you can't do maintenance runs on engines at full throttle because all of the noise that it creates.
Right.
And so those are quiet hours. And so it's important for people to be able to sleep through the night to be productive tomorrow at work. That's why they put quiet hours. So at Berger, we had quiet hours. Those are the hours after 8 o'clock at night, unless something's on fire, somebody is about to die, we don't send internal emails. And we don't send any more so from 8 to 8. 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. were our quiet hours. You know what that is? That's called strategy. That's having a strategy. And guess what the people who worked for us, guess how they felt about quiet hours?
They really loved quiet hours.
Loved quiet hours. Loved it. Because they'd never worked anywhere before where they had quiet hours. Because again, my question is, you send that email at 8:30 at night and the regional or the property manager then has to walk away from story time, dinner time, their favorite TV show to dig into the report to now craft an answer, and they send an answer and they get no response because nothing's actually going to change tonight as a result of that question and that answer. So why did you send the email?
Right.
Why'd you send it?
To begin with.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I've heard many, many stories just like that.
That's right. It will happen tonight. There'll be people all over America who work in multifamily who are going to get an email from their VP, from their head of marketing, from the head of HR, from the regional manager, asking a question. They'll answer it because they feel like they have to. They won't get a response back because that person's moved on to sending an email to the second or third or fourth or fifth person for the night. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But it's all about strategy.
Yeah. Oh, I love the concept of strategy, and strategy in an environment where you have flexibility. That's greatness.
I will tell you, as a COO, CEO, and a president, I've held all three of those titles. I've written countless emails at 10 o'clock at night. I've looked at more reports than I could even remember at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, of those hundreds and hundreds of emails that I've written at 10 o'clock at night, I don't know if I've ever sent a single one of them. Not at 10 o'clock at night. Wrote the email and then saved it, or later as technology started to advance, you can schedule it to go out at a certain time. Excuse me, but I didn't send it because I was keenly aware of how it made somebody feel when they got an email from the president of the company at 10 o'clock at night.
Yep.
It made
the title has weight.
That's right. It does have weight. But I'll tell you what I have done. I have sent many emails at 10 o'clock at night that says something like this: Elizabeth, I know you're at home with your family, and I respect your time. But before I go to bed for the night, I just wanted to say that today was a really tough day. We had some big challenges to get over. And the only reason we were able to get over them is because of your contributions. And what you did today makes you invaluable to us. And I just wanted to say thank you. Have a good night.
This might be the first tear up on Prop Talk.
Now, listen.
That's amazing.
It's 10 o'clock at night, and that email comes through from the COO of the company, the CEO, and you're with your husband, and you've taken your makeup off, and you've gotten into bed, and your phone vibrates, and you're like, oh, it's an email
Pavlov's
from
dog. You're going to look at it.
Yeah, it's an email from Bill. That's right. You're going to look at it, and that's what it says. What do you do with your phone in that moment? You hand it to your husband. Say, look at this. And you know what your husband says in that moment? I wish my boss treated me like that. Now you have your husband's buy-in. Now your husband says, I love who you work for. Guess what that does? See, that's what I'm talking about. See, that's not motivation. That's inspiration. That's creating that passion that creates a commitment. Because now tomorrow you go to work and you've been inspired and your passion is burning. Your star is shining bright and you're super committed because you didn't get an email from me at 10 o'clock at night saying, what's going on with our occupancy?
Yeah.
You got an email
What's
from
your
me.
plan? Yeah.
That's right. You got an email from me that says, and it stands out because you never get emails from me because I don't do that. But when you do, like, this must be important. It is. Nothing more important than saying thank you.
Yeah. Well, and the other nice thing about that is the weight, the impact on just sleeping that night.
Yeah.
Because if you have people that are passionate, they take things personally.
Right. That's
they're
right.
invested.
Right.
They're going to feel that pain. So you, just by that acknowledgement, you free them.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to fail. We're all going to have those tough days.
Yep.
My favorite quote is, and I use this all the time, by Henry Ford: failure is simply a way to start again more intelligently.
Right.
And I believe that. So that's a good lesson. Take that. Think about those opportunities because that emotional credit you get with your team is huge, and it'll pull you through the hard times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're creating equity.
Yes.
Right. You have equity in your home. Right. And you can use that equity for all kinds of things later when you need it.
Yep.
And building human equity is the most valuable type of equity we can build. And I talk about this a lot in my speeches, about building human equity. And I just don't think that we take the time to think about that human equity.
Yep.
I think about Colonel George Strayhorn, who I served under the United States Air Force, and man, I would run through a brick wall for Colonel Strayhorn because he built up so much equity. Colonel Strayhorn, he was the unit commander and he had an important job and he had a lot of men and women under his command, but we could have, an event going on at the base and you'd run into Colonel Strayhorn in your civilian clothes. So he can't see your name tag because you don't have a name tag on, right? And there you are, maybe they, like I said, they've got some kind of little carnival going on base, and you run into Colonel Strayhorn and he'd see you. He would know who you are, and he would know who your family was.
No.
And, we mattered to him. And that always stuck out to me, that we mattered to him, and that's why.
It's that simple, what you just said.
And that's why,
people want to know that they matter.
That's right. We'd run through a brick wall for a guy like. There were other guys that I served under that they'd see me in civilian clothes, had no idea who I was, and didn't care.
Yeah,
they were too important. They're too busy, focusing on their careers to invest in my career. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a matter of talking about you have two types of culture of freedom, culture of control. Here's with every culture is either intentional or it's unintentional.
Right.
And with Colonel Strayhorn, it was intentional. Mm-hmm. Everything served a purpose. And it wasn't manipulation. It wasn't disingenuous. It's who he was. Mm-hmm. But he understood how to connect the dots. It was a very intentional culture. Listen, the Air Force has a culture. But Colonel Strayhorn took that culture and he fertilized it. And he made, he got a better crop.
Yeah.
Because,
yes.
because of what he did.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have weeds because of what he did. Even if we were struggling with a lack of rain, we still had a bumper crop because of what he did. Mm-hmm. Everybody bought in. They were fully invested. There was no great awakening, therefore there was no great resignation. And to tell you the truth, looking back, I think if I would have served my entire career under Colonel George Strayhorn, I probably would have served 30 years if they would have allowed me. It was an honor to serve under his command. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to be for the people who served under me, whether it's at Berger or other companies that I've led. I wanted them to look back and say, I had the honor of serving under Bill Nye. Yeah. I wanted to be intentional about, whether we're going to build a culture of freedom or a culture of control. I wanted to be intentional about it. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people get up and they go to work every day, and their culture is unintentional. Mm-hmm. It has, and here's the thing.
Oh, I can see it because I can tell you from, just to add to this, in the early days, I would help with the trainings. There was only a handful of us to get started.
Sure.
And it was the unintentional culture. I can tell you how many of them I've seen when somebody walked out of the room.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was always,
that's right.
That was a hard thing for me in the beginning because, no one was asking my opinion about that, but I would see it. And I've been in those shoes. And that was one of the things that was, I didn't anticipate that, but that was hard to sit through. Because I want to help, I want to fix it, but that's
right,
not.
But that's
they
not.
Hired me for software.
Right, but see, you nailed it in the head. You saw it as soon as somebody walked out of the room. An unintentional culture, is always the mirrored image of the strongest personality in the organization. Mm-hmm. Always. Yep. And it's almost always driven by fear. Yep. Almost always.
Well, it's funny you say that because they're kind of tying things back. Seems like we've been talking about the labor challenges in multifamily ever since I started, predominantly on maintenance for years, which we still haven't fixed that.
Yeah, of course.
And now, leasing staff, back of house. I hear about it all the time that we have labor challenges. And you actually said something in our prep about you believe that there's actually two issues when it comes to the labor challenges in multifamily. You said one is, forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but is it short staff and the wrong staff?
Yeah.
So can you elaborate just a little bit on that? And what do we do about that?
Yeah, sure. It's funny. I was doing a presentation in Chicago for a management company maybe 2 weeks ago. And there was a young man by the name of Tyler in the audience. And I remember Tyler because he stood out. I mean, he stood out like a chocolate chip in a bowl of rice. Okay. He just didn't look like anybody else in the room. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't his skin color. It wasn't his gender. It was his age. Mm-hmm. I think he told me, I talked to him, I think he said he's 25 years old. He's a maintenance supervisor, he's 25. Okay. How many 25-year-old maintenance supervisors do we have out there?
Wow.
Right? There are like none.
Yeah.
You go to any property anywhere in the country.
Seems like a 15-year-old driving the car.
Right, that's right. What's the average age of a maintenance supervisor in America right now would be your guess?
Somewhere in the 50s?
Yeah, that's right. That'd be my guess too, is 50 or above, right? Young people aren't doing this for a living anymore. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, Mike Rowe's doing a lot of good. I love Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs Mike Rowe. Mm-hmm. I love Mike Rowe. I love his appearances. I love the things he's talking about. He's got the foundation now. He's helping to send people to trade school. And, all this talk about forgiving student debt has actually been so good for the multifamily industry, because what it's actually done is it's led to a conversation that nobody ever wanted to have. They didn't intend for the conversation to go this way, but it's going to happen. Listen, if you're going to open the door and talk about whether or not we should forgive student debt, then you got to accept the entire conversation. And the entire conversation is, well, why do you have all this debt? Why can't you pay it off? What did you get from that 4-year degree? And it has opened people's eyes to the idea of, is a 4-year college really right for me? Or should I consider something else, such as a trade school? And so, I think that's where we've got to really focus is we've got to get in the high schools.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got to promote this as a career in high school. We've got to get them before they decide to go off to a 4-year college and be strapped. So the student debt conversation has been good for us. It has made families, parents, and even the students question, do I really want to go to some university and pay $40,000 a year for a degree in underwater basket weaving? What am I going to do with that? And so, we've got a shortage, but, we're focusing on the wrong people, meaning, we're trying to fill these holes with people who don't have the aptitude for it and don't really want to do it. I think we've got to find a way to help young men and women fall in love with working with their hands. And if we can do that, and we're starting to see that. It's starting to happen. It's small, but it's starting to happen. Companies now, and this is really, really smart, and I'm a big advocate of this. We had a lot of conversations during my time at Berger, and after I left, they took it all the way to across the finish line, and I'm proud of them for this, is that they started their own school. And so they'll hire you. They have a fully functioning school. It's got all the technology and all the equipment. And they'll hire you as an intern, and they pay you to be a student. You accumulate zero debt. You get paid. And if you graduate from the school, you get a big raise and get placed at a property as a maintenance tech.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
That's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
More companies are going to have to do that. And their schools are small. Their classes are small. 6 people, I think, something like that. But, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you, who isn't?
Or our local associations, our local affiliates could really lean in on helping put this together. Then you sponsor and do the same thing.
Yeah, they got to get paid.
Because
I'm going to tell you, that's one of the keys is they got to get paid to be a student.
Yes.
That's appealing to a high school kid. I'm a senior, and I've talked to a Marine recruiter. I've talked to an Army recruiter. I've considered a couple of community colleges. I've looked at the 4-year college, an hour from home. I just don't know what I want to do. And somebody walks in on career day or walks into the classroom, prearranged through the school and says, hi, I'm Bill, I'm with ABC Management Company. And so let me tell you what we have to offer. And you say, we will pay you X dollars per hour to be a student and learn a skill that you'll be able to use for the rest of your life. In fact, you'll be the most popular person in your family because you'll be the person who can change anybody's garbage disposal, fix anybody's dishwasher, fix your grandparents.
In fact, you may not want to tell everybody in the family what you've learned to do.
Your grandparents are going to call. Meemaw is going to call you and say, our air conditioning is not working, and you love Meemaw, and it just makes you proud to be able to go to Meemaw's house and get her air conditioning working.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, that's what it's going to take, and more companies need to embrace that.
Yeah.
Invest in your own. Listen. You build your own talent, grow your own talent, but we're running out of time because if you and I are right, if the average maintenance supervisor out there is in his or her 50s, how long before they can't do it anymore, don't want to do it anymore,
right?
And who's going to step up?
Yep. Well, I think we're already seeing that.
Oh, we are.
Yeah,
we are.
So when you said first off, we got to figure out how we're recruiting, where we're going, but what about the back half of that we have the wrong people? What did you mean by that part of the comment?
Yeah, we have the wrong people, meaning that we're so desperate for hiring that we have taken our eye off of the importance of the values. That we, listen, we are touching people, and way I'm about to say this is going to sound awful, and I'm going to acknowledge it. We're touching people in the most intimate way.
Okay.
And by what I mean is our interaction with them is in their home. Nothing's more intimate than,
Oh, yeah.
than home, right?
Yes. Okay,
And
if this makes you feel any better, I used to do a when we have new hires and we had our kickoffs or our seminars. I used to tell people, look, nothing's more personal than their apartment. People get naked in there.
yeah, right, right.
Nothing is more
Right.
personal.
You know, when I say we're touching people in the most intimate way, that can be taken a completely different way.
You can say it my way from now on.
Yeah. And so because we're going into their home where they're getting naked, we're going into their home where they want their privacy and you know, they hide all their secrets. We got to make sure that we're putting people in, you know, on our payroll that have great values.
Mm-hmm.
Because people who have great values make mistakes, but they care about the outcome, and they'll do anything, you know, they can, you know, ethically to fix those mistakes and make sure that you're happy.
Well, I think most companies probably want to and think that they're hiring that way.
I think you'd be surprised. On the maintenance side, it has become
on the maintenance specific, yes.
Yeah, we're just dumping bodies into the bin and hoping that one of them works out.
Yes.
And it's awful. Because I'll tell you what we're doing. When you do that, when it becomes a mass slaughter like that, you're just dumping people onto the team. You know what you do to the people who care, who are passionate? You killed it. You killed their passion, which means they're no longer committed. Because quite frankly, you're making them work with people they don't want to work with.
Yeah. You know,
I'm tired of carrying the load.
Yeah, in the Netflix book, one of the comments in there is A players want to work with A players.
That's right. Talent density. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what now I've forgotten. Reed Hastings calls it talent density.
Talent density.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and I think this is something then if you're in this, out in your management, you're facing these challenges, like what do you do to get a hold of that? I think, you know, I can't remember what it was called. I have to think about it. But we used to have value-based testing. It was different. It wasn't behavioral-based testing.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting to understand how someone's sense of worth for themselves, not necessarily work-related, just in general in life, what things they naturally aligned with that to them signaled success or security or safety. Right. And when those things aligned with our business, and I don't know that we didn't have zero churn. I'm going to have to go back and look now that you threw that out there. But I know at one point in Sequoia, we had ridiculously low churn. Mm-hmm. And I attributed it to utilizing that. And that was John Cullens, I think, shout out there. That was a company he worked with that he's the first one that brought it to us. And we worked with him on it. And it was so impactful for our company because we started hiring. But more importantly, we used it to help manage to that. Yeah, like when you understand this. And I think this goes back to where we started the conversation about leadership. It's not say as I do because I said so. Mm-hmm. It is understanding what motivates people, what inspires them, because you can't lead everybody the same way.
Right.
Right. And that's an important aspect of this. So circling back, putting all this into a bow here, you've got, it's interesting. We have a lot of leaders, I would say, in our industry right now. Maybe they started a management company. Maybe they started they were a sponsor. They came into multifamily on the back end of the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. Things are looking a lot different right now. And you mentioned that there's an uptick in foreclosures. Yeah. Because I worried about that. So now for me, investing in multifamily, which I'm very proud that I'm actually even in this position because I started off as a temp and a leasing agent, a single mom. So that's really important to me. But I had my one criteria is that I'm looking and working with investment opportunities where people navigated the Great Recession because of what I know they learned versus some of what I see now, which are people that are struggling or their occupancies aren't where they're supposed to be. You get caught with your pants down when you really don't understand the intricacies of management or you don't have your ship in order or your team in order. So what advice would you give to some of those leaders? Because I would imagine their stress levels are really high right now.
Yeah. I posted something on LinkedIn, I think 2 days ago, kind of about this. And
I did not know that for the record.
It's just absolutely blown up, like thousands and thousands of engagements just in a 48-hour period over this. Because you got to remember a couple things. First of all, you're always going to have your season where you can get the hay in the barn. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to have your season where you're going to have to eat that hay because there's nothing else, right? Mm-hmm. So, the wintertime, in the summer, you put your hay in the barn, and then the winter's lean. Mm-hmm. Last year, our industry saw an average increase in rental growth of 15%.
Hmm.
15%. That's putting a lot of hay in the barn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now it's 2.4%, 2.3%, I think, actually. So suddenly it feels like we're in a famine. What's interesting, though, we're at 2.3% right now. Over the last 20 years, it has averaged 2.4%.
I know.
So we're right there. We're right where the average has been, and yet we're panicking. But I'll tell you why we're panicking. We have so many controllables that are choking us bad, really bad. Insurance rates are the worst.
Right.
Insurance rates are just destroying people. And so,
And taxes.
yeah, and taxes.
Property taxes.
Right,
Yep.
absolutely. And of course, and labor costs, because we're paying fees to entice people to come to work for us. We're paying higher wages, and listen, I'm happy to see people get that. I'm happy for them. But that's one of the big one. I think salaries, payroll's up like 8%. So these are some pretty big numbers. Insurance is up 28.3%. That's a huge number.
All right.
But you got to remember as a leader, number one, the people working on site didn't cause this. They did not cause this. They didn't cause the insurance rates to go up. Don't take it out on them. They didn't cause the taxes to go up. So always, make sure that you remind yourself they're not the cause of this, but they are part of the solution. So treat them like they're part of the solution.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Don't stop trusting them because your insurance rates went up.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, because what we want to do, I think it's human nature that we want to suddenly start to tighten the chain on people when
the margins get slim.
That's right. All of a sudden, we start putting more and more controls in place. And the more controls we put in place, the fewer creative moments we create. And if we really are smart, we'll acknowledge that the answer to most of our problems require a level of creativity, trying something different.
Right.
That's where, I'm thankful that I'm an innovator. I'm in that 2.5% because I'm a nut. I'll try all kinds of things. And I've tried some things that have failed, epically. But I tried. But solutions require some creativity, because if you do what everybody else is doing, that by definition is mediocre, right? But if you do something,
it's just good enough, which I've always thought was never good enough.
That's right. And so in order to be at the top, you got to do things that others never thought of doing, or they thought of it, but they only talk about it, never actually pulled the trigger. And so as you restrict people, as you put them on a shorter and shorter and shorter chain, the creativity, with every link you take out of their chain, I want you to think about it as a creative link. And I'm going to get you so close, you have no creativity left. You're no longer problem solving, you're surviving. But you didn't cause the problem. So why am I treating you this way?
Yeah.
And so listen, I get it that we got to tighten the belt. We got to look at some of our expenses. Say, can we do away with this? Can we find a better solution for this that would be a little friendlier to our budget? All that's important and all that's good, but don't take away the creativity of your people. They didn't cause it. You'd be shocked at who actually may be the person who says, well, what if we do this and all of a sudden your occupancy jumps 3%?
Yep.
What if we do this and all of a sudden, instead of growing your rent by 2.3%, you're growing your rent by 3.1%? And so, tap into, you've got hundreds of people working for you. Somebody in that huge stable of people, somebody's got a brilliant idea.
Yep. The people on the front lines. Isn't there, like Richard Branson, I think he says something to this too. If you just ask the people that are doing the task at hand what they need to be successful,
right, they
will tell you.
Yeah.
Just like customers.
Yeah. I used to say to my regionals, just ask your managers if it works. That's pretty basic, right?
Yep. And be open to their answer.
Yeah. How many times do, people at the corporate office make a decision because, I have the title, I'm expected to make all these decisions. And so boom, I make it, and then you implement it. And then the people who have to make it work say, this is terrible. This doesn't work.
Yep.
So that's why I constantly would say, ask your managers if it works.
Yeah.
And if they say it doesn't work, why are we doing it?
Yep. I know it sounds so simple. It is that simple. I guess it doesn't
is
sound
that simple.
It is that simple.
But we become so arrogant.
Well, yes, I think. And sometimes too, fear and anxiety. Like you're scared to make an even, another wrong decision or something that takes away from the numbers when, jobs are at stake and management contracts are at stake.
Right.
Well, I did have one other question. What would be the, if you were back in your role as COO or CEO right
Mhm.
now, if you had like one nugget of advice for today's challenges, what would that be?
It's so important to just understand. I'm trying to remember who it was who originally said this, so I can't take credit for it. I wish I could because it's so simplistically brilliant. And that is, take care of your people. They'll take care of the customer, and the business will take care of itself.
Mm.
I don't care what the cycle is. I don't care if it's raining or sunny outside. Take care of your people. 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 Yeah, let's take care of your people. Because those are the people who are going to take care of your customers.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't take care of your people and they don't take care of your customers, you won't have enough customers. You'll always have customers, but you won't have enough,
Mm-hmm.
and then your business will struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take care of people, one of the things I always reminded myself weekly in those executive positions I've
Mm-hmm.
held was that it was not my job to ever concern myself with whether or not our customers were happy. I never went to work and said, I've got to do more to make sure our residents, our customers are happy. I did nothing. And I mean that literally.
Mm-hmm.
I did nothing to
I
ever
believe
ensure
you.
that our customers were happy. Wasn't my job to make sure they were happy. That was the manager's job, the maintenance supervisor's job who worked on site. You know what my job was? To make sure those people were happy.
Yeah.
The managers and the maintenance supervisors and the regional managers and the head of marketing and the marketing team and the accounting team. And if they were happy and understood what was expected and knew how to execute on it,
Mm-hmm.
then our customers would be happy. Because when you do business with any business where the people enjoy what they do and they're good at it, you love being their customer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, right. Now, listen, Chick-fil-A is an example of that, and,
Yep.
there are others, that are
Southwest
just
Airlines.
outstanding like that, and so, they understand that,
Mm-hmm.
and so if I could ensure that every customer interacted with somebody who loved what they did and they were good at it, they probably were glad that they were our customer. They were probably glad that they chose us, and they would continue to be to choose us until the day came that something forced them not to be our customer.
Right.
They graduated from college, or they got a job, or they had triplets, or whatever the case might be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the advice is that just focus on making sure that your team loves what they do. They love who they do it with. They love who they do it for, and they know how to do it.
Yep. The only thing I might add to that is make sure they love their software.
Yeah. Well, that certainly, listen, that plays a big role. That plays a huge role.
Yes.
Because
I see that too. There's a lot of seniors that are in that software less than 5% of the time.
Listen,
they make those decisions.
That's one thing that you guys, really made an impact on me was all the talk about nobody loves their software. And I'd hear that over and over and over. And I started thinking, yeah, I actually do hate our software. Why are we using this software if I hate it this much? If I hate it, how do the people working on site feel about it?
Yep.
And I found out that they felt the same way. And so we fired that software provider, and you became our software provider because I didn't want to be with a software provider that we hated anymore.
Yep. Be surprised if you empower, put great tools in the hands of the people who actually do the job.
Yeah.
That also makes them
Yeah.
more successful, and they love their jobs a little bit more.
I know we're wrapping up, but I want to tell this story real quick, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest men in my life was my grandfather. I loved my grandfather. He was the first man in my life I ever loved. I loved him before I realized that I loved my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I would just, my grandpa was just that guy. He was just great. And I remember they came to our home for Sunday dinner, and Grandma walks into the house with her pot of homemade beans that she made, and I'm outside doing something, and I run up to Grandpa because I love this man, and he said, "Show me your tools." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Let me see your garden tools." So we went into the shed where we kept all of our rakes and our hose and all that stuff. And I remember our garden hose had dirt on them. And my grandpa said, "Why are they dirty?" And I said, "Well, because we use them." And he said, "But it's an important tool. Take care of it. Treat it like it's important."
Mm.
And he said, take those outside, take them to the hose and wash the dirt off of those. Don't ever put them away dirty. Take care of your tools. And I'm not, trying to make a comparison between people and a garden hoe, but that resonated with me all these years later. Take care of the things that actually do the work. Yep. And that's the people.
The things that matter.
That's right. Those are the people who are on site. Take care of them. Don't let them go. Don't let them become dirty. Yep. Take care of them.
Awesome. Wow. I was going to say, we are about to wrap up, but I did have, if I don't ask this question, I'll be upset with myself, and we may slice this in more in the beginning, but Bill Nye, the apartment guy.
Yeah.
I wrote this down because I'm sure growing up, I would assume, even though I love Bill Nye and I'm a science geek, but not everybody is. Have you always liked the reference or the, alignment to Bill Nye, the science guy? And maybe you did. And then how did you decide to, it makes common sense, but
right.
Talk to me, but I'm just curious. How did you go from Bill Nye, Air Force veteran with a certain, persona to embracing the apartment guy?
Yeah, that's a really fair question. First of all, Bill Nye, the science guy, is 7 years older than me. So, when people make references to what it must have been like for me growing up, it wasn't anything because he was a kid.
Yeah.
When I was 10, he was 17. Mm-hmm. So there was no Bill Nye the Science Guy when I was a kid growing up, but my kids had Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Oh, okay.
So they got it all the time. And people would say, oh, I bet your dad is Bill Nye. And my kids would say, oh, yes.
That's funny.
My wife gets to tell people I'm married to Bill Nye. And people are like, what? You're Bill Nye's wife? She is. So when I started my speaking business years ago, I would be introduced as not Bill Nye the Science Guy, but Bill Nye the Apartment Guy, and I hated it. I hated it.
See, I seem to remember something once when I saw it. I remember the cringe.
I never told anybody I hated it because I didn't want to make them uncomfortable for saying something they thought was clever. Mm-hmm. When I'm standing up on stage being introduced and I'm like, oh, why? Why do they have to always do this? Why can't I just be Bill Nye? And so a year ago, 13 months ago now, when I relaunched my speaking business full time, I thought, you know what? The people have spoken. And you got to give the people what they want. But more importantly, I thought, that's how people remember me. Mm-hmm. I still don't like it. But it's how people remember me. So I said, you know what? I'm going all in. I'm going to launch my website, BillNyeApartmentGuy.com. And if people want to call me Bill Nye, the apartment guy, they can call me Bill. If it helps people to remember me and to find me, then it's a good marketing campaign. Yeah. So just embrace it and go with it. And that's what I've decided to do. So I actually still don't like it, but I've embraced it and hope it's memorable. And because, I'm self-employed. Yeah. I need to work.
Yep. Well, and I can understand those catchy phrases, but I don't know if you ever pondered this thought, but in those moments of that type of introduction, it's actually a true testament to your knowledge and your experience.
Yeah, no, I've never actually looked at it that way. And being honest with you, I've never looked at it that way.
I'm going to turn you around on this.
I just thought they were being cheesy.
No, it's... Anybody that meets you is like, no.
No, well, thank you.
It's like,
thank you.
You have an amazing skill set. You are a fantastic leader.
Thank you.
You're a pleasure to sit here and talk with. I just feel honored to have this much time with you twice. But I think it's the ultimate compliment because there's a lot of apartment professionals in this industry, but you're the apartment guy. Just think about that.
Okay, I will.
See, I'm turning you around on it.
Yeah. Oh, my wife will say, what happened to your head while you're in Dallas?
Well, I just wanted to say, I have a lot of great podcast guests, but this one was a long time coming. And thank you for your patience because you travel, welcome. I travel. Sometimes I'm not as good on LinkedIn as I should be, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I welcome the opportunity to work with you in any capacity. If I had property management company today, I would most certainly entertain having you come in and speak with us and help us, look at ourselves and figure out how to pave a strong path forward. I believe in this so much so that I'm don't want to let cats out of the bag, but you might be getting an invitation for Resmania because I do think you have a lot to say, and I think people are open to hearing it. It can help them stand out. It can help them beat their competition. And like I said, you may not be able to do what you set out to do, but if you can just be better than those around you, you will be successful, whether it's in your role or your assets performance, region's performance. And there's just a lot of great wisdom here. So
well, thank you.
You were awesome.
Thank you. Listen, I'm honored to be on your podcast. I'm going to pitch. I've got a book coming out.
I knew that, but I didn't know if we were allowed to talk about that yet.
Yeah. I'm getting close to it being completed and hopefully ready to be published soon. I've had a few people say, what are you going to call it? What's the title? And I've said, I don't know. I want the book to speak for itself, and it will tell me what it should be entitled. And literally this weekend, it's just like I had an epiphany, and my book now has a title because it makes perfect sense. And it just exemplifies everything I believe. And the title is simply Culture Grows. That makes sense because that's what I keep trying to get across is that culture grows. You don't build a culture, you grow a culture. And I thought, well, that has to be the title.
Yeah.
That culture grows. And hopefully people will see that on a shelf in a bookstore or,
I have
online.
an idea for the cover image. I used to run marketing for Resman. I mean, I'm not as great as our CMO right now, Taylor, but I do have an idea.
I'm open to ideas, but hopefully people will see that and say, I wonder what that means to the point to where it'll intrigue them enough to buy it. Or maybe they'll just say Bill Nye and they'll think it's that other guy and they'll buy it because, they've been hoodwinked.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to that. I have a feeling we'll have some of those on display at Resmania, and I welcome. So as soon as it's for sale, I want a copy because
thank you.
I will be happy to read it.
I'll make sure you get a signed copy.
Oh, awesome.
By
Thank
someone.
you.
I don't know who will sign it, but I'll find somebody to sign it.
All the rest of my podcast guests, y'all just all fell to the bottom. Only signed book copy I'm getting is from Bill.
Well,
just saying, the rest of y'all got to step it up. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for joining us for another episode of Prop Talk. We hope you enjoyed this. There's a lot of nuggets in here, a lot of good takeaways. I hope you'll take this back to your organization and just, think about how you can grow your culture and really be a shining example. So be sure to subscribe to Prop Talk. It's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, to learn more about Resman's property management platform and to get more information on the multifamily ecosystem, please check out myresman.com. Bye, guys. Say goodbye, Bill.
Oh, goodbye, Bill.
No, don't say goodbye, Bill. Say goodbye to them.
Oh, sorry. Oh, goodbye to them. Goodbye, them, whoever you are.
Goodbye, everyone.